Peace and blessings. This is Raisa Kiwala, the divorced Muslimah coach. Today we are on to video number 16. And this is also one of my favorite topics because I feel like I have grown the most in this particular area. And that's the area of vulnerability. That's the way, how can we remain soft and open and vulnerable without feeling let down or hurt by other people. This is a huge thing. This is why we wear masks with different people, socially or at home or professionally, to really so we don't expose our real true self, like being raw and vulnerable, almost like, being naked in terms of what's inside, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, your wants and needs and desires. And why is that so important? And what does that have to do with anything? I'm going to share that with you today. Why it's so normal. It's so normal that after hurt and pain, that you want to close up, that you want to build up walls, that you want to keep people out, and to not feel the pain or the hurt or the rejection. And what happens is that when we do that, to build this safety, this wall between us and the outside world, people or situations, what happens is that we block out the good people too. We block out the people that we are meant to have connections with and relationships with, because Allah didn't create us here to be here by ourselves, me, myself, and I, in my own little world. I'm not letting anyone in, and I'm not going to be able to connect with anyone else. We weren't created for that reason and that purpose. And so how can we get to that point where it's okay to be you with all, like, you don't have to be perfect with all of your flaws. You're perfect just the way you are, actually, with all of your flaws. You're exactly where Allah wants you to be. So, and this is important in all of our relationships, with our children, with our parents, with our partners, spouses, our professional relationships, our friends, our community, any relationships, when you can be authentically real without having to self-edit, without having to worry about, if I say this, they'll think this. And how do you know they're going to think that? If I do this, then they'll respond this way. How do we know that they're going to respond that way, right? It's just, again, it comes through thought, that we are feeling a certain way because of how we're thinking, and then that affects our actions or lack thereof. So, we decide who to let in and who not to, because not everyone deserves to know all the intimate details of your life, because we have different types of relationships. We have acquaintances, we have community, we have family, and we have deeper connections. It could be family, it could be friends, but we have deeper connections, and not everybody's at the same level. It just doesn't work that way, right? But when we are not worried about getting hurt, not worried about rejection or the fear of rejection and the pain that it causes, when we are comfortable with ourselves through our relationship with Allah, we can show up with fearless confidence. We could drop all the masks that we are carrying around in our relationships, even in the relationships that we have, with our closest people, our children, our parents, and spouse. And I remember, I didn't know how to be vulnerable, or maybe I did at a certain point, but when all the hurts and the pains build up, then you don't want to be vulnerable anymore, and you lose that connection. And from fear, from really expressing and showing yourself. How many of us, when we were married, or if you're still married, remember a time where you could share vulnerably, and then there was a time that you couldn't share vulnerably? Maybe you had that, maybe you didn't, but when you can't open yourself up at the risk of being rejected, but it's understanding the inside out paradigm, You're not living in that rejection, meaning that is an opinion someone has of you or what you're doing, or your idea or your dream. It doesn't define you, and it doesn't define your value or your worth, someone else's opinion. When you understand that your feelings are coming from your thought in the moment, from the way you're thinking about a statement someone makes, the way you're thinking about an opinion someone has of you, is where the hurt feelings come from. Your self-talk, how does that translate into your self-talk, is where the hurt and the pain comes from. When you understand and you accept that no one has the power to hurt you, no one, nothing or no one from outside of yourself has the power to hurt you. Only Allah has that power. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Right? There is no power or might without Allah. You can really reach your full potential. You can be courageous in your expression without having to worry about what people say or what people think or how they'll respond. And you can truly live a life where you're not living in regret. And regret is more painful than the hurt you think you're going to have from rejection, or from being made fun of, or from what people will think of you. Have you ever lived in regret? Do you know what that feels like? Because there's no do-overs. There's no going back. There's only going forward today, right here, and then moving ahead. And that feeling of regret is an ache in our soul. And so when we're courageously living by truly expressing ourselves, our wants and needs and desires, then we are completely fearlessly confident. And there's two things that we need to live that way. Number one is to remember and really surrender and live in the fact that Allah is your protector, your provider, your maintainer, your sustainer. He is the one who handles all of our affairs, and He is their nurturer, and He guides and He aids us. That's it. That's where it comes from. Number one, in belief in that. Number two is our feelings of hurt and pain are coming from our thought in the moment. It's coming from anyone else or anything else is an illusion, because remember, thought and feeling are two sides of the same coin that cannot be separated. And if it is, then it's wrong. It's an illusion. It's not truth. And so, our fitra, our natural fitra that each one of us is born into, is to have that trust and that reliance. And along the path, we get distracted with our ego, our nafs, our environment, and we lose that connection of that natural fitra, especially when shaitan diverts us and our own nafs takes over, our own ego takes over. And vulnerability allows us to be heard and seen and understood and even respected, because every person wants that. Every human being wants that. And if we are feeling the connection to Allah, then we can open ourselves up, knowing that we can't be hurt by anything or anyone unless we give them the power. And only Allah has that power. So we can't give anyone or any situation that power. And we also accept that Allah is our protector, provider, maintainer, sustainer, and our nurturer. So those two things I know have helped me profoundly in being able to be vulnerable and open and honest and truly express my authentic self. And when I was able to do that, everything shifted. The connections that I made, the relationships that I had, the people that came into my life are completely total different caliber. You hear about people saying, oh, that person is really real, or she's so fake. Yeah, because we feel like we have to put on all these facades and these masks to be accepted, to be heard, to be understood, to be validated and respected. No, you don't. You have to have the courage to be and show up as your authentic, natural self. And you can tell when someone is true or someone is faking it, right? So my challenge and my invitation to you is, are you being vulnerable with the people who are closest to you? Do you say what you need want and desire, can you openly express that without worrying about how it's going to be taken, without worrying about the other person's reaction, without self-editing yourself? You know, do they know your wants, needs, and desires, the closest people in your life? I mean, even the people who are not close to you. Can you proclaim it? Can you share it? Can you be open with it, and not hide your truth and diminish yourself? You know, and do these people know? Does the world know, or are they assuming, or do you assume that they know? Because that's a whole nother ball game of when you make assumptions about in relationships, and then you have expectations that they're going to know and then respond that way. If people don't know, they can't be differently, they can't interact differently. So that's my invitation and challenge for you today is, are you able to be vulnerable with those two things I shared with you, with the people that are closest to you, and then working your way out? And where would you like to be more vulnerable with, and with whom? You know, how would that change the dynamic of your relationships if you didn't have that fear of rejection, pain, and hurt? Can't wait to hear your feedback and your insights. Looking forward to sharing and connecting with you in our group. And talk to you soon. Take care. Peace and blessings.